Hey everybody, in this episode of the Dr. B Show, I interview Alex Ocampo. Alex Ocampo has done amazing things in corporate America, and he has an amazing invention making any watch a smartwatch. It's a great opportunity, great interview for you to learn about a fellow Latino who is doing great things in the community. Enjoy. Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of the Dr. B Show. I am your host, Dr. B, and I'm here with the great Alex Ocampo. Alex, how are you today?
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you, Alex. We met at Angeles Investors, right? Back in the summer. Shout out to David Olivencia and Adela Cepeda and everyone that's involved in Angeles Investors. So shout out to you guys. So let's jump right into it, brother. Tell everyone about yourself.
Absolutely. So I'm Alex Ocampo, founder and CEO of Ganance. The short version of Ganance, we developed a wearable that makes any watch a smartwatch. So you can wear your favorite classic watch. It's a slim sensor that attaches to the underside, connects to your app. So you get the best of both worlds. You get the health tracking you'd get from a fitness tracker, the notifications you might get from a smartwatch, but you get to wear the watch you actually want to be wearing.
I love
I'm
it.
originally from Chicago. Went to high school and college in the Boston area. Started my career in New York at IBM, so very strong ties to New York City. Lived in the Bay for a little bit because I was the first in my family to work in tech, and I was always curious, like, what is Silicon Valley? And then sort of coming out of the pandemic, moved back to Chicago to be close to family and start building my business in Chicago.
I love it, man. We'll definitely get to that in a minute. Before we get to that first, I'm a very big component on education. As you got, as you may not know, I'm the first with the MBA and the first with a doctorate in the family. So tell everyone about your experience at Tufts with your Bachelor's of Arts in Economics and Entrepreneurial Leadership Studies. How did that experience help you what you're doing today?
Yeah, so when I was thinking about kind of what to study, I think for me at the beginning it was a process of figuring out all the things I wasn't going to study. And then ultimately I landed on kind of creating my own business major. So Tufts is right outside of Boston in Medford, Somerville, Massachusetts. And they don't have a like formal business school. But kind of how I thought about it was I can learn about kind of the economic theory. So kind of by majoring in economics, but then also get the practice by being an entrepreneurship minor. So sort of combining those two, I feel like gave me, both the theoretical background, thinking about like, supply and demand, like those kind of basics. But then through the entrepreneurship minor, I was actually working with companies on projects, whether it was like defining their marketing plan, their strategy, financials. So it gave me a lot of real world hands-on experience. And, I always say that the 5 entrepreneurship classes that I took are what got me my job or all my internships, my jobs, because it was kind of an internship within the semester. So I had like practical real world experience working with companies that, gave me the skills to be hireable. Kind of putting those together is sort of what I was able to figure out. And then I think, thinking about how it helps me today, I think with the economics major, I think just developing the mindset of trade-offs and like thinking about things in trade-offs. Because as a startup founder, you're always making trade-offs, right? Like, do you want things fast? Do you want them cheap? Do you want them high quality, right? Like figuring out what those different levers to pull are. And then the entrepreneurship minor, just that spirit of just getting started, right? That spirit of taking something from zero, so literally nothing, an idea, a concept, and building something out of it. I think that's something that is pretty hard to teach, but I commend Tufts for giving those opportunities to just jump right in and get practice with it. And I really enjoyed my experience so much that I've now gone back to Tufts University to be an entrepreneurship professor. So I teach a class there called Paths to Entrepreneurship. And the whole premise of the class is there is no path to entrepreneurship. It's about seeing opportunity and putting action behind it. And you can do that in any number of ways, right? There's no first job, there's no major, there's no kind of ideal path to become an entrepreneur. It's just being in your situation, your circumstances, and being action oriented to pursue an idea. And you can do that in a corporate job. You can do that as a side hustle. You can do that, the creator economy. There's so many different ways to do it that, it's kind of trying to help students understand that, you know, there's no like, kind of what I said before, like you can't really study entrepreneurship and you can because there's what worked for somebody won't necessarily work for you. But there's a lot you can learn about, how people think when they get stuck or how they think through problems or how they kind of navigate uncertainty. And I think just presenting students with different examples, they seem to be, really enjoying that.
Yeah, I love that. There's no cookie cut one way to, right, for entrepreneurship. Like everyone has a different journey, different clientele, different everything, right? So I agree with you 100% there. But I think if you provide the best like tools, right, in the toolbox, then everyone can attack, from there, right? So that's awesome, brother. I did some research, right? I do my research. I don't just like interview folks blindly, right? So you also are certified in data science professional, improving deep neural networks, hyper parameter timing regulation, regularization, and optimization. Tell me about that. Tell us about that. I found that fascinating.
Yeah, so I've always been a learner. I'm of the mentality, if I don't know something now, that's just it's a point in time. I can learn anything, and I think so. I went through that sort of training and certification and education while I was at IBM. Just I wasn't an engineer. I wasn't technical per se. Didn't have that background, so being in a very highly technical environment like IBM, working at the cutting edge of AI, this was starting in 2014. I was there through 2020, right? So kind of before the current AI hype cycle. I honestly I wanted to know how it worked. And it was for me, we're talking about AI, all the things it could do, but I didn't feel like I fully understood it. So I just took the initiative, just kind of nights and weekends, putting myself through all these courses, boot camps, starting with like web development boot camp, right? Like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, going all the way through these like data science certifications, all the way through, building my own AI algorithms and doing all the data cleansing and seeing like what actually goes into it, I think was really for me, just I think it made me better at my job and honestly having more empathy for the engineers who were building the things. In that time, I was a product manager, right? And you don't have to be super technical as a product manager, but it helps, I think. Um, so for me, I think it made me better at my job. And then today, thinking about it, you know, getting that education, getting that background was helpful then because, like I said, it made me better at the work I was doing then. But I think now even more so, where everything is AI today, quote unquote, right? Everything claims to be AI. So I think for me now, it's just a good filter, right? Understanding what is AI, what is a wrapper of AI, what is smoke and mirrors, to really try to kind of pick through the noise of today's current AI hype cycle.
I love that. Yeah, and you was doing AI before AI was cool, as they say, right?
I
That's
mean,
awesome.
for me, it was cool back then, right?
It's cool
Like
back then.
like Watson was on Jeopardy
Yeah,
in 2011, so it was just coming out of that. And it was, what are we going to be able to, what challenges, what are the new problems we're going to be able to solve? So, a lot of the same energy you kind of see today, but we were a bit ahead of the curve.
absolutely, absolutely. You spoke about IBM, so I'm gonna touch on it now, or I was gonna touch on it later. But you spent 6 years there, and your last role was as a Watson engagement leader. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so IBM was my first job out of college. I joined in a rotational program, which, if there's any, early career or college students listening, I would say look for those kinds of programs because it really gives you a chance to understand and get experience in lots of different parts of the business. How I usually frame rotational programs is like the company doesn't really know what they want you for, but they know you're smart, they know you're capable, and they want to get you in the door. So it gives you a chance to kind of also, learn your strengths, see if there's like parts of the business that you're most intrigued with. So that's how I started, and then I moved into a consulting role because for me, I knew at the time I wanted to do work in the public sector, so understanding how AI was going to be used for like national defense, law enforcement, education, social programs. Um, so got a lot of really good experience there. I was, fresh out of college, also got to travel a bunch for that role. But then in that role, I was client facing, so I was talking to customers and understanding like what they needed. And I would be, giving the feedback to the product teams like, oh, our customers want to do this, this, this. And I would often hear like, oh, we can't do that. We can't do that. So I was like, well, what can you do? So I had the opportunity to move over into product. And that I think is sort of the experience that probably best prepared me for, building a company today. Because as a product manager at IBM, it's called an offering manager. Um, you're at the center. You're like the CEO of your own sliver of the product. You're the quarterback in the, managing your design team, your engineers, your sales, your marketing. You are at the middle, ensuring that like everyone's moving in the same direction, right? Like I view, CEO responsibilities as, comes down to like three basic things, right? Like communicate the vision, right? So, articulate and communicate the vision, ensure there's capital for the business, and hire the best people, build the team. So I think my role at IBM, although I wasn't responsible for bringing in money, those other two of like finding the right people to bring on your team, whether that's internal, external, but also communicating the vision and ensuring the entire team or teams that maybe aren't immediately on your team, but you need their support to get you to where you want to go. I think that was such a critical skill. Um, and then for my last role there as Watson engagement advisor, I really liked like being like talking to clients. I think once you go into a product role, you are a bit more internal because you're building the thing, which I think is super cool. But as a engagement advisor, this is also when I moved to San Francisco. Such a cool role. Like I was responsible for leading sessions with like world leaders, executives, to help them understand what is AI, how to get started, lead like 2 or 3 day workshops to help them understand their own organization, how they can be preparing for AI, and then ultimately, guide them through leaving with tangible use cases and ways to get started. And I think for me, the most valuable part of that last role was really understanding the power of storytelling. Because especially, at that time, AI, this was like 2018, 19 through 2020. Like at that point, like AI, people were a little bit more familiar. But it was communicating very technical information, but in a very accessible way, right? Because you weren't always getting super technical people in the room. So how do you um tell a story. And at IBM, we had these really cool centers where like they're very experiential. So we had like, 40-foot digital wall that you control with like a wand. We had like a space where you like go in and it's like a 360-degree room, almost like a planetarium kind of thing. So we had all these really cool tools to like show people the impact of the technology, um, put it in a put it in a way that they would relate to. So, for example, one of the scenarios we would walk people through was simulating a massive hurricane hitting New York City, and what are all the things that need to happen to appropriately respond? Like, how do you understand citizen sentiment, right? By like analyzing incoming information or complaints. How do you prioritize where to send trucks to go? There's trees down. How do you understand where you need to be deploying? So really putting it in like a human scenario to then help people understand, like, oh, I see the application of AI. AI isn't magic, right? It's advanced data science. It's, really complex technology, but at the end of the day, it's still just a tool to use. So, understanding how to put it in context to see what the benefits would be to the end person. But, being able to do that while telling a good story, I think, applying it to what I'm doing today is, most of what I do is storytelling, right? Selling the vision for the company, um, both the historical, but also the future looking. Um, so I definitely value my time at IBM.
That's awesome. It looks like it set like the framework to what you're doing now, right? So, which segues into my next question, right? Which is like, tell us about your entrepreneurship journey and how, you're the founder of how do you pronounce it?
Ganance.
Ganance. I was like Ganance, like Ganance. All right, like Ganance, right? So, how'd you tell me about your entrepreneurship journey and how'd you find the smartwatch and Ganance, etc.
Yeah. I mean, but depends how far back you want to go, right? Like
Give
I
us the
was,
short version.
I was creating Pokemon cards back in the day,
Nice.
yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
So I've always had a bit of that like hustler mentality.
I think me
Um,
too. You and I both. I think that's why we get along great.
uh, but for Ganache specifically, like um, for me, it was a personal problem I wanted to solve. So I've always liked watches as like accessories. Like I still have the very first watch I remember owning from the '98 Chicago Bulls championship run. I was like the coolest kid in kindergarten back then.
Right.
Uh, but watches have always been sort of a constant for me, just as accessories, right? I think, I grew up with that Deion Sanders quote, like, if you look good, you feel good. If you feel good, you play good, they pay good. So, I always thought like, the right watch just made me feel like this is me, right? This is my style, this is my personality. Um, so when I graduated from Tufts, right, my family's originally from Mexico. So, we're the first generation, building, graduating from one of the top schools in the country, super proud. And to celebrate, my oldest brother bought me this watch I'm wearing today, actually, as a graduation present. And, I was moving to New York and I wore this watch everywhere. You could not find me not wearing it. Young man in New York City has to look good. Um, and this was 2014, 2015. Fitbits had just come out. Apple Watch comes out in 2015. Everyone's doing the step challenges, like who's gonna get the most steps that week. So I wear like my watch in one wrist, my Fitbit on the other one. And after a while, I couldn't really get comfortable with that look. But I got hooked on the data. I thought the tracking, the accountability, the social element, I actually found myself like using that data to make better decisions, right? Like it's like, oh, I've been on the couch for a couple hours. It's probably time to get up and get out and like go do something, right? Or, I've been super active, maybe you need a rest day, right? So like actually using the data to make those kinds of informed decisions. Um, and very gradually, it wasn't like a conscious decision I made. I completely stopped wearing my watch. Like I had upgraded to like the Galaxy watch or something, but the watch that my brother gave me was sitting in a box somewhere collecting dust. And fast forward a couple years, my brother who gave me the watch, he had a health scare that thankfully he survived from. But it was in that period of uncertainty that I remembered the watch he gave me. Um, again, collecting dust. And I was like, how could I possibly stop wearing it? Like it's so meaningful to me. Like all the things it represents for me, like graduating school, starting my career, the love for my brother and my family. I was like, oh yeah, I chose my data over my style. And that's when the question really became for me, like, why can't I have both? Like, why do I have to choose between the two? Um, so, as you've probably pieced together, I have no experience building a physical product. Um, so,
Yeah, that's
the
what that was my next question. All right, so you made it smart. You showed us in the beginning. You made it a smartwatch. So no experience building one. So tell us how did that piece end up coming about?
yeah, I think how have you the earliest stages of entrepreneurship, like anyone with an idea, honestly, it's about finding ways to not get stuck. Just like keep because you're never going to have all the resources you need at the beginning. You're never going to have kind of everything you need up front. So just finding those like small ways to just keep pushing forward, keep validating, keep talking to people. So, for me, it was like, okay, I know I have this problem. So my first step, I didn't build anything right away. I was like, let me just go talk to people. So over the next like maybe 2, 3 months, anyone I saw wearing a smart anything, I would ask them two basic questions. One, do you like it? Right? Very open-ended question. Do you like it? Everyone said yes. Everyone's like, yeah, I like the data, I like the tracking, I like the contests, whatever. Then my follow-up was, if you could be wearing anything on your wrist, would you be wearing that? And every single person not even kidding. Every single person was like, no. I'd rather be wearing a bracelet, a watch, something else. And that's when I was like, huh, I think there's something here. Like we all like the data, we all like the tracking and accountability, but none of us actually like the form factor or like the vehicle of getting it. And then I started with like, oh, if you can, make that smart, would that work, right? So kind of go through that customer discovery, customer validation. Um, and then once I got enough of that, I was like, okay, I think I have the confidence to start building something, or at least, start thinking more about the actual product and what the product would be. And my first iteration there, I bought the cheapest wearables I could find on Alibaba, just ordered like 20 of them and just ripped them apart. I was like, I want to see what is the technology, what is in there. Because you have to start validating like I think the point of my product or the point of or the problem we're solving is like, how do you make it invisible? How do you make it like discrete? And I want to see what the actual sensors were like. So when you rip off like the case, the enclosure that like these smartwatches come in, you realize it's actually a very thin layer of technology. So what I did there was, put a piece of double-sided tape on it, stuck it under my watch, and wore that for a couple weeks, and just be like, okay, yeah, I think this is possible, right? And then once I validated that, then I started reaching out to engineer friends and got people on board just to help me keep moving things forward. And at the time I was moving to Chicago, where just coincidentally, Chicago is home to the largest hardware innovation space in the nation, called M Hub Chicago. And imagine like big warehouse, half WeWork, so like offices, co-working, that kind of thing, half manufacturing center. So anything you need to build a physical product all under one roof, whether it's like 3D printing, metalwork, woodwork, electronics lab, like you name it, all here. But potentially, perhaps even more valuable, besides the actual like resources, is the people who are here. Because again, before this, I'd never built a physical product before. So being in a space where lots of people have done different pieces of what I'm trying to do, whether it's people who've worked with Bluetooth, people who've worked with, batteries and charging, and people who've built wearables, being able to tap into those resources and get that support, again, to not get stuck, I think was just a blessing, honestly. Just coincidence that I was moving back home and this place exists in my home. And to my knowledge, there isn't really another place like it yet.
I love it. Tell us about like where you're at with the organization, like where are you revenue size? Tell us about the raise. I know we met through an Angeles investor, so tell us about where you're at today.
Yeah, so we're still, we're pretty early. We're just coming to market now with our first product.
Okay.
Uh, you know, Fundraising, I think, is always potentially tricky or tough. So, we're focused on sales. So generating pre-orders, use that to fund production. We, got some exciting partnerships that we're developing with top watch brands, fashion brands. Um, no, it's really exciting to see like the momentum we're getting, especially this early, right? We're still in the pre-seed stage, about halfway through raising our round. So, really excited. For me, it's just like I can't wait to get the product in people's hands because all the demos I give people when they get their hands on it, they're like, okay, yeah, this is crazy.
I love it. I love it. What advice would you give for an entrepreneur starting today? Stay the course. I don't know. Buy an existing business. What advice would you give them? Because regardless, it's still entrepreneurship. It's entrepreneurship, right? Whether it's a startup, whether it's buying a business, still the
Yeah,
same concept. So
yeah. A piece of advice that another founder gave to me. She runs a consumer food business called Kuli Kuli. Lisa, she said, founders or startups don't fail, founders quit. And that to me just really resonated of like, just this is not an easy path, right? If you're gonna go try to build something, you're signing up for you're signing up for a difficult road. Just blank, kind of how I said at the beginning, right? There's no one way to do it. What work for somebody won't necessarily work for you. So it's really understanding like what is your why? Like why are you doing this? If it's to make money, I promise there's a lot easier ways to make money, right? So really diving into your why, because that's what's going to be what drives you, right? And that phrase that startups don't fail, founders quit, just kind of speaks to the grit that's needed. Um, because if you're truly committed to it, if you're about it, you're gonna keep finding ways to not get stuck, right? If it's funding, if it's building the team, if it's there's always going to be some way to keep pushing forward. And the startup does to that point, the startup doesn't really fail until you give up, right? So I would say like if you're starting from something from zero, starting something from scratch, just really diving into like what is your motivation, because that's what'll keep you going. Not if things get hard, when things get hard. Right. So, really spending time early on to understand what is your motivation for what you're doing.
I love it. I'm gonna throw a question at you, man. What is your why, and as far as what Ganance, and what are your goals with Ganance over the next couple of years?
Yeah. Like I said, for me, I just wanted to wear the watch my brother gave me. Like it was that simple. It was just like,
Sure.
I want the data, I want the smarts, but I think largely tech companies make ugly watches, watch companies make bad tech products, and I don't think tracking your health should be a fashion choice. So, for me, it's making the technology modular, invisible, and like when I think kind of long term of what we're trying to do is making the technology modular and invisible, where wearable tech needs to be cool or it needs to be invisible. And most tech companies choose to be the cool product, like, you know, right up front, kind of becoming your identity. And that's not necessarily important to me. Like, I want to be discreet. I want to empower you to express yourself, your fullest self, right? If that's the cool thing about watches, jewelry, accessory. Like everyone has different style, and I think that's such a beautiful part of it. And the more time I've spent working in the watch space, I talk to a lot of watch lovers, go to a lot of shows. Most watches have a story behind them, right? For example, for me, it was a graduation present, super sentimental. For others, it's a loved one who has who left something behind, or for some people, it's their first like big boy paycheck. They go out and buy a watch, right? There's watches do so much more than tell time. They tell stories, and that's what I want to empower by what we're building here.
Yeah, you're not the first to tell me, brother, that everyone who has a watch is always a story behind, oh, passed down generation to generation, or a story behind like a graduation or a gift or a wedding. So I get it. I get it. I think it's amazing what you're doing. So I appreciate everything you do, man. Where can people find information about your organization or you, or want to invest with you? Where can people find more information about that?
Yeah, so Ganance.com, GANANCE.com. And I'm very easy to reach. It's Alex at Ganance.com. Would love to, however I can be helpful or answer any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being on my show. I got to see you behind the scenes of who you are, your upbringings, and how you pivoted from corporate into entrepreneurship. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for being on my show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate you.
Alex Ocampo, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed that episode with Alex Ocampo. It was an amazing opportunity, amazing interview. I connected with him through Angeles Investors. Hello, networking. Once again, Deal Maker, how to easily raise unlimited capital for your deals. Just be on the lookout for more information on the book release date and events leading up to it, and even events post it, right? At BorjaConsultingGroup.com. That's BorjaConsultingGroup.com.